G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. What I'd love to do today on this very still, very hot and very beautiful Sydney summer's day is to add yet another episode to the ever-growing library of material that I've been able to amass and to accumulate step by step onto this platform, this channel known as Jim's 5am Club, to make it one of the biggest repositories of personal development material in the world. I look forward to bringing you these episodes day by day, and it's over the past 6 years that I'm just amazed at how quickly that the 1 or 2 episodes can quickly compound into 2,600 plus episodes. The book that I'm going to go through today is a little bit different. It could be triggering to some people. It's a relatively old book, having been published in 1956 by an author who goes by the title and name of Joost A.M. Meerloo. The title of this book is The Rape of the Mind. And just that title alone is quite alarming. But let's see what we can learn, what we can glean, and what we can take from this book to incorporate into our own inventory of skills, knowledge, wisdom, and potential power, and to hopefully allow us to have some patterns, some perspectives that can change or influence our worldview. And the other thing that it shows also is that whilst we think that the world we live in today is quite unique, quite dramatic, and quite bad, this author reminds us that nothing much has changed since the 50s, and dare I say, nothing's ever changed. It's always been like this. It just means that people need to understand that this is life, and we just need to make the most of what we've got with what we've got. This book is about brainwashing and how the mind can be manipulated. And one would read this book because, like everybody, we feel overwhelmed by the world as it is, by the constant noise, the constant outrage, the cycles of outrage, the fear-driven headlines, and the subtle pressure to think, speak, and feel in ways that are approved. How interesting does that sound? So let's go on a walk and talk and see what we can learn. And one of the early lessons from this book is that you notice how easily one's attention can get hijacked, how quickly certainty is replaced by curiosity, and how exhausting it feels to try and feel and stay mentally independent. So like all of us, we want to try and understand what is going on to us, to our families, to our friends, and everybody around us. So the message from this author, from this book, is that it doesn't just answer that question. It actually goes one step further to unsettle us, to clarify us, and to strangely strengthen us. This book is written by a psychiatrist who studied totalitarian systems and psychological coercion, and the book reveals how minds are shaped, broken and reclaimed. Despite its heavy subject, what stays with us most is not despair, but actually the awe in terms of how resilient, creative and powerful the human brain truly is. So the first key message to come from this book is that the human mind is most vulnerable. This is really, really powerful and really interesting and really topical and really current. The human mind is most vulnerable when it is overstimulated. Meerloo explains that mental breakdown doesn't begin with force. It actually begins with exhaustion, constant pressure, fear, repetition, and information overload weaken our ability to think clearly and critically. Reading this point makes one feel uncomfortably familiar with what the author is saying. When the brain is overwhelmed, it doesn't stop thinking, it just stops questioning. This makes one realize how important rest, silence, and reflection are not as luxuries, but as defenses of one's freedom. Repetition can replace truth if we're not careful. When you hear something over and over again, it becomes your reality. It becomes the new normal. It becomes accepted. One of the most chilling insights is how repeated ideas, even false ones, can start to feel true simply because they're familiar. The brain craves coherence. When it hears the same message over and over, it begins to accept it, to reduce internal tension. This isn't stupidity, it's efficiency. Understanding this helps one become gentler with oneself and more intentional about what we allow into our mental space. The next message to come from this book is where we learn that fear actually shrinks the mind, whereas curiosity expands it. Meerloo shows how fear-based systems work by narrowing attention. When people are afraid, their thinking becomes rigid, binary, and reactive. And what strikes us is the inverse. Curiosity actually helps to reopen the mind. The moment you ask why, the spell begins to break. And this reminds us that asking questions isn't rebellion, it's a biological act of mental health. We go on to learn that independent thinking is a muscle that must be continuously exercised. Freedom of thought isn't something you either have or you don't. It's something you practice. Meerloo emphasises that people don't lose their autonomy all at once. They lose it through small acts of mental surrender. The hopeful flip side is that independence can indeed be rebuilt the same way, through deliberate reflection, self-awareness, and moral courage. The brain is adaptable and it can relearn itself. Even under pressure, the mind seeks meaning and wholeness. What moves one is that Meerloo's quiet faith in the human psyche. Even under extreme coercion, the human mind still searches for integrity, purpose, and inner truth. Total control is never complete. There is always a part of the brain that observes, remembers, and thankfully resists. This isn't optimism, it's neuroscience and psychology rooted in lived experience. By the time one finishes this book, The Rape of the Mind, you feel more grounded, not more afraid. This book doesn't just warn us about manipulation, it teaches us how precious consciousness is. The human brain, thank God, is not fragile. It's responsive. It learns, it adapts, it questions, and it heals. And what this book ultimately gives us is a respect for our own mind, and it reminds us that thinking clearly is an act of care, that attention is sacred, and that maintaining inner freedom through rest, curiosity, and truth-seeking is one of the most beautiful things the human brain can ever do. In a world that is competing for your thoughts, this book helps you remember your mind is not meant to be conquered. Your mind is meant to be understood. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. A powerful book with some powerful lessons there. I hope you found it as useful and as productive as I have. I look forward to coming to you again from another place and with another message of empowerment. This is Jim from Jim's 5am Club, signing off until we chat again.